here on Froggy 95.9. My name is Ryan Peters. I'm joined by Joe Spillman. You can't see me unless you're on the Grueling Truth. I have this beautiful 3-cheat Kyle Busch shirt that just came out. Joe is ready to talk about sports. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm always ready to talk about sports. It's my passion. And because we're doing that, Ryan, as always, I'm doing great.
So it's not just us two today. We are joined by a special guest talking about IU basketball. Steve Risley will join us in the last segment. So if you want to stay tuned for that, make sure that you stay tuned.
Yeah, just in case you don't know, and if you're an IU fan, you're going to know who Steve Risley is. But in case you don't know who he is, he was he was on the 1981 national championship team with Isaiah Thomas. So, you might want to hear what he has to say when it comes to IU basketball in our last segment.
Yeah, he even has a ring to prove it.
Yeah, a big ring.
So.
Every time I try to critique anything he's saying on any other things that I do with him, like our NASCAR show on Stuck in the Catch Fence, and sometimes I hop on the Grueling Truth and talk a little football over there, Ryan. Anything he does, anytime he disagrees with anything I'm saying, he holds that national championship ring up to the camera and it quickly silences anything I have to say.
I think it's rude, but again, I don't have one, so I don't know how I would react.
Yeah.
But first, Joe, it's just me and you. So let's talk about this. Lamar Jackson is set to become a free agent. I think more than likely he's going to be franchise tagged. I think that's kind of what all of us are expecting. But the national media, if you hold that to any value at all, are saying that he is now being blackballed in the NFL when it comes to getting a long-term contract. You and I, number one, are Bengals fans. But more importantly, we follow every team in the AFC North. So looking at this, and this isn't the first time that so-called a quarterback was blackballed in terms of getting a long-term contract. Do you think this is more of just the national media looking for something to talk about when it comes to we're kind of in that period where the combine ended, we're waiting on the draft? Are they just talking about this so that they get people to click on their articles? Or do you actually think that Lamar Jackson is being blackballed by the NFL and not getting a long-term contract?
Well, I don't remember if it was Pro Football Focus that came out as a whole or Ian Rappaport.
Hashtag don't read.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But a credible source has at least said that the Baltimore Ravens are going to have a restrictive franchise tag on Lamar Jackson, which essentially means that any offers that Lamar Jackson gets, Baltimore, A, has the opportunity to at least meet that. Right. The price tag that is given by another team. And two, if he is traded away or goes to another team, that team would then in return have to give their next 2 first-round picks to Baltimore, which next 2. Yeah. So, that's first-round picks in the NFL are huge. You can make or break a franchise. For example, Joe Burrow with first-round picks. They could also kill your franchise for many years to come, Achilles Smith. But
that's in the past, Joe. Don't bring up the past.
Having said that, though, I think what we are looking at is I don't know that Lamar Jackson's being blackballed with this restrictive franchise tag. What I think that we are seeing, and I'm going to try to get to the point with this. Lamar Jackson played 9 or 10 games this year. I don't remember the exact number. He was hurt half the season the year prior to that. Lamar Jackson is not a quarterback. And the way that he plays, he is not able to play an entire season, nor will he ever be unless he changes his playing style. Now, Lamar Jackson can pass the ball. Lamar Jackson can be a good quarterback. He has the opportunity to be a very good quarterback. But the thing that we've seen in the trend in the NFL is when you get a quarterback that could use his legs like a Lamar Jackson, teams decide that they are going to change their offense to be more conducive to that style because running quarterbacks can give you a whole lot more yardage with their legs at times. And when you talk about a dual threat quarterback, that's exactly what you're talking about. The problem is in this situation, when you're playing in the NFL, I don't care how athletic Lamar Jackson is, how big he is, he's still taking hits like a running back from NFL linebackers and linemen way more than he should be. And he's going to get hurt way more than he should be as a quarterback. And I know the argument can be made, well, Joe Burrow's a pocket passer. He doesn't use his leg much, and he blew his knee out his first year. You're absolutely right. Things like that can't happen. But they're more likely to happen, and the injuries that you see more likely out of a running quarterback are exactly what we've seen with Lamar Jackson. When you see lower and mid-leg injuries, when you see shoulder injuries from constantly leading with your shoulder and trying to pick up extra yards. And that's essentially what's going to keep happening to him. Unless Lamar Jackson changes his style of play or gets in a system that allows him to be a pocket passer, allows him to move around and throw the ball downfield more consistently than what he does, he's going to continue to get hurt, because the average lifespan of a running back in the NFL is about, I think on average, about 3.5 years. Now exactly. So what we see, and there's a reason for that, because those guys get hit a lot. And now running backs, and you talk about hybrid backs in the NFL, now what you see, because we don't really see pure fullbacks anymore. We see halfbacks that can block, but they take a lot more pounding than what meets the eye, not just from getting hit, but they're up in the trenches blocking as well. You don't see that much out of Lamar Jackson, but he is taking those hits just like a running back, play in and play out. And unfortunately for him, every franchise, I think, that is interested in looking at him is interested in looking at him for what he could do with his legs and not his arm. And when you look at that, they also look at what his history is and his ability to complete a season. So I don't think he's being blackballed. I think people are just logically looking, hey, are we going to spend $250 million on a guy that's only going to play 9 games a year for us? Ryan?
Let me preface it this way. We've only heard this will be the third quarterback that's now quote unquote blackballed. Cam Newton, number 1. And then we heard about RG3 as well. Now, what do those 3 quarterbacks have to do with each other? Well, running game is very important when it comes to their offense. We just got done watching Patrick Mahomes play against Jalen Hurts. I'm a Jalen Hurts fan. I like Jalen Hurts. But he simply couldn't overcome Patrick Mahomes. And why is that? Because Patrick Mahomes has an ability to throw the football. Let me preface it even further. We watch every single Lamar Jackson game. Why is that, Joe? Because we're AFC North fans of the Bengals. We don't just watch the Cincinnati Bengals. We watch what our opposition is doing as well. So if you were going to talk about Jalen Hurts, maybe we wouldn't be the greatest people to talk about Jalen Hurts. But I will tell you this. We're probably the best people talking about Lamar Jackson.
Objectively, yes.
Yes, because we want to see him lose. That's just the nature of the sport. He plays in our division. So take that for what you will. Lamar Jackson has had 2 great seasons in his entire career. I don't care what you want to say. He's had a Heisman season. He's had an NFL MVP season. Marty Mornhinweg is gone. They decided that the person who constructed the entire offense, which you said had to happen with Lamar Jackson, he's now gone. So they now have a new offensive coordinator in Baltimore. And I think this is no surprise that the new offensive coordinator goes, hey, I can't have a running back at quarterback because a running back at quarterback does not win Lombardi trophies. Simple as that. Yes, Patrick Mahomes does run, but Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to depend on the run to be a great quarterback. That's not the same thing. Jalen Hurts has to use his legs to be a great quarterback. I think we've seen that. Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback, but he has to use his legs to be a great quarterback. That's not the same thing with when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is not, he's better than Lamar Jackson.
I would venture to say, actually, Ryan, that Patrick Mahomes, quite possibly, you could argue, is a better quarterback when he sits in the pocket and looks for the open man instead of running outside the pocket. He opens a lot of things up, and that's one thing with Patrick Mahomes that you see is when he gets out of that pocket, 9 times out of 10, he's thrown to his tight end. I'm not going to speak his name because I'm still mad at him. You can figure it out. And
those are similarities.
Yeah, and he makes things happen. But if you watch him and you kind of take a look back at the playoffs this year and you watch him to where he has to stay in the pocket the majority of the time, he's still a great quarterback. So I think at the end of the day, when we talk about Lamar Jackson, I think Lamar Jackson, based on what we saw him do in college, has the ability to do that. And they need to get to the point where if you want Lamar Jackson to consistently play and keep playing for you, you have to put him in a system to where he becomes a passing quarterback and only uses his legs when he has to, like we see out of Joe Burrow. When it's that third and 9 situation, absolutely nothing's open, and that pocket collapses around you, and you move the ball upfield, you step up in the pocket, and it opens up, and then you take off up the seam. If you're going to be a running quarterback that way, go ahead and do it, but don't plan your entire offense out of what. Go ahead.
It's a quarterback league, not a running back league. I don't care if your quarterback can run or not. It is a quarterback league, and you've got to be able to throw the ball. To exactly what you're saying, you're right. You can use your legs when it's needed, but at the end of the day, when it comes to winning games, it's a quarterback league. It's the ability to throw the football. Again, Lamar Jackson has shown the ability to be outstanding, but that's twice. That's twice. And he's made light of the situation of running the football, being a running back that could throw the football. But that's not Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback. As much as Bengal fans hate to say it, Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback.
Right.
He uses his legs to supplement his ability to throw the football. Same thing as Ben Roethlisberger. Okay, I'll say this about Ben Roethlisberger. The hardest thing to do was tackle Ben Roethlisberger, but it wasn't because Ben Roethlisberger uses legs. It's because he uses arm, and that's what you have to have in the NFL. And I think the league is now caught up. Again, Cam Newton, RG3, two players that have used their legs, but when the NFL caught up, who did they lose against? Peyton Manning. RG3 was unable to stay healthy. Lamar Jackson didn't even come to the playoff game against the Cincinnati Bengals. So he couldn't commit making the trip to Cincinnati. But you're telling me that the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens, should commit $40 million to him?
No.
You couldn't even commit to show up. But I'm supposed to commit $40 million to you. And I think that's where we kind of come to, where we meet as a whole. A pocket passer and the ability to escape the pocket. Patrick Mahomes meets both of them. A healthy Joe Burrow has now met both of them, as we've seen that, Joe.
Right.
Joe Burrow can escape the pocket, but that's not what Joe Burrow needs to do to be successful. Lamar Jackson has to escape the pocket to be successful. Marty Mornhinweg made the offense to where Lamar Jackson's legs were more important to his arms, and we now see what happens when Lamar Jackson's legs are more important than his arms. It's not a successful formula. The NFL is not blackballed Lamar Jackson. It's just retaining exactly what it's had to do to win championships.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And when you see, and Daniel Jones for New York, perfect example. Pocket passer, a guy that's going to stay in the pocket. I don't think Daniel Jones is a great quarterback. I don't think he's worth $40 million a year either. But you know what? New York just paid him $40 million a year over the next 4 seasons because he is what you expect to see out of an NFL quarterback. He is what wins you playoff games. He's what potentially can win you a championship game if you put those supplemental players around him, which New York does not have. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and harp on how great New York's going to be because I don't think Daniel Jones is that guy that's going to lead you to a championship. But he plays the style of football that is needed in the NFL. Now, I'm not saying putting your own spin on that style of play, like a Patrick Mahomes, being able to move outside the pocket and open things up is not something that works as well. But being a running back out of the quarterback position is not going to win you championships in the NFL. And I said this before the playoff game in Cincinnati against Baltimore, playing them back-to-back weeks with Tyler Huntley. And I told this to multiple people. Tyler Huntley gives Baltimore just as good a chance as Lamar Jackson. And I meant that.
Joe.
I meant that.
That's the truth.
It is the truth. Speak. They did not lose anything. The Baltimore Ravens did not lose anything by not having Lamar Jackson show up and play that game. Nope. As a matter of fact, they might have had an advantage over the Bengals because the Bengals could shut Lamar Jackson down. They would have destroyed the Baltimore Ravens if Lamar Jackson was under center in that game. I can guarantee you that. He wasn't going to win you that game. So, for one, he runs too much to recognize coverage, and Lou Anarumo had proven that he could disguise coverage like the best defensive coordinator in the NFL because I think he's up there as one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. So, at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson isn't being blackballed. It's just a bunch of people wanting to conjure up stories, which is going to lead us probably into our next segment, Ryan. I'll let you close it out, but it's just people wanting to conjure up stories.
It's going to exactly lead us to our next story. We're to the point in the season where we have to conjure up what is actually media, especially with the most important league in sports, the NFL, and that's why this is a story. So again, like Joe said, like I've said, Lamar Jackson is not being blackballed. He's just being treated like any other quarterback that is a run-first, not a pass-first quarterback. But when it comes to the national media, we'll speak a little bit more about that next. Thanks for tuning in. We have Steve Risley talking about IU basketball, 1981 champion coming up. So make sure that you stay tuned. But we're going to talk about ESPN first and what the alternative is after ESPN. This is Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. I'm Ryan Peters. That's Joe Spillman. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Again, thanks for joining us. This is Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. I didn't mention this at the beginning, Joe. We're sponsored by Craig Toyota. located on 258 Clifty Drive on Madison Hilltop. If you love Toyotas, like myself, drive by my house. It looks like a Toyota parking lot when it comes to new or used vehicles. Make sure you step in and see what they have to offer for you. They've been great sponsors of Froggy 95.9. We love them so much, and we're glad that they're able to sponsor the show. Me, especially being a Toyota person myself. Joe, now, I thought last segment was a little bit heated.
Yeah.
This segment might even get a little bit more heated.
A little dicey.
But one other thing to plug. If you're looking at us, you're like, Ryan, oh my God, look at that shirt.
Yeah, Kyle Busch.
Kyle Busch and the HG, the Grueling Truth. If you miss any of our segments, we're on the Grueling Truth. We have a Facebook page, Talking Sports here on Froggy 95.9. Make sure you join us. Our last segment, we're talking with a 1981 national championship with Steve Risley, talking about IU season. Make sure you join us there as well.
Yeah.
But Joe, we've ventured into alternative spaces. I talked to you about, hey, there's a lot of people that want to talk NASCAR but don't know NASCAR.
That's right.
And I want to talk to you about national media. So Kendrick Perkins, former NBA player, spent some time in the league. He had this to say, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to sound like an idiot like Kendrick Perkins did. Essentially, since 2000, there have been 5 MVPs. There have been 5 MVP awards, let me put it that way, that have been brought out to people that did not finish in the top 10 of points per game. Those MVP awards were twice to Steve Nash, once to Dirk Nowitzki, and twice to Nikola Jokic. And you're asking, well, why is this important? Well, right now, as you write for Ball is Life, so you follow the NBA game.
And so do you.
Under pseudonames, sure. Nikola Jokic is right now the favorite, at least on betting wise, to be the MVP again this year. Kendrick Perkins on ESPN's favorite talk show,
Stephen A.
Yeah, Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Essentially said that the only reason why those 3 athletes won the MVP was because 80% of their votership had the same skin color as the foreigners that won the MVP that year. Now, let me preface this. Only one of those MVPs should have ever been questioned, and I'm a Kobe fan. Joe, I could show you all the Kobe stuff that I own, and it's not because of what Kobe – it's a part of what Kobe did, but what Kobe meant to the game of basketball and his mentality. The Mamba mentality was different. And I think Kobe should have won MVP the second time that Steve Nash won MVP. That's the only one I can dispute. But essentially, he said that the only reason why those athletes since 2000 have won MVP is because the race of the people voting line up with the race of the people that have won the MVP award. And that's led me to this. You and I have decided that we're going to start our own NASCAR show, Stuck in the Catch Fence, along with our next guest, Steve Risley. And it's because of this reason alone. National media does not care about you as the listener/viewer.
Right.
They want you to be angry. Politics has now determined what they view as the number one source of talking points. It's not to unite you of what sports do. Sports unite people. When society has said you should be divided, sports has always been a unification when it comes to your financial situation, your racial situation, whatever it may be. When everybody else said Jackie Robinson shouldn't play baseball, sports said, yeah, it should. He's a really good baseball player. And we've seen that. ABC Sports literally last week said, Joe, that Jesse Wuju, we follow NASCAR more than anybody else. There's a NASCAR background if you're following on the Grueling Truth. Called him a Hall of Famer. A guy that used to do iRacing, played video games. They called him a Hall of Famer. I'm here to tell you right now, there's going to be a reckoning when it comes to sports media, and it's going to be people who actually love it, not push an agenda, who actually love it, are going to be the leading cause of sports media. And I'm telling you right now, there's no greater source than ESPN. And thankfully, JJ Redick had the audacity to again go against the narrative and say, no, it's just because they're good. Do you believe that we're coming to a point where reckoning is happening, where people who actually love sports are going to be more informed and a greater source of information versus the people that are speaking on mainstream media?
Absolutely. I mean, and when we're going to talk about this Kendrick Perkins deal and what he said the other day on Stephen A's show, you know, Reddick had to preface everything before he even spoke, because I truly believe he thought that he was going to get fired by saying what he was
thought he was
about.
going to get canceled. You're absolutely right.
He thought he was going to get fired because he said he loved his seat, he loved being on the show, but he had to say this, and basically told Perkins to stop pushing an untrue narrative. And anybody that follows sports, you just kind of hit on this point. Sports has broken the race barrier far before society has, because at the end of the day, you know, I had a baseball coach tell me one time, you know, you get your uniform all nice, you get your belt all nice lined up, you have your batting gloves on looking good. And, you know, I was once told, nobody cares what you look like. It doesn't matter if you have 4 eyes and a big hole through your head. You go up there and hit the ball, nobody's going to care what you look like. And that's exactly true to sports. Nobody cares what you look like. Nobody cares what your skin color is. Nobody cares what your ethnic background is when it comes to sports. True sports fans do not care about that. And that's why sports have been able to break color and race barriers before society. When you take a look at baseball, baseball was actually one of the last sports to enter the arena as far as breaking racial color barriers. When you take a look at football, when you take a look at basketball, there wasn't a historic problem with race barriers in basketball. And I find it kind of sickening that in 2023, we're going to bring up the fact that these guys, Steve Nash won an MVP because of his color. That's absolutely ridiculous. I don't care if he was in the top 10 in scoring. You tell me the years that he won MVP, what other player was leading their team like Steve Nash? And I'll wait, because
it would be Kobe Bryant.
It would be Kobe Bryant.
1 year.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Okay. So, you know, when you talk about the other players that have won, and you want to base that on their skin color, you take the actual color of those people's skin out of the equation. The statement Perkins made was absolutely racist.
Yes.
What he said was racist by the definition of being racist, because those guys did not win the MVP in the NBA because of their skin color. They won it based on their team standings and their ability to lead their teams to wins in needed situations. And when you look at things this year, which if you don't follow the NBA, we're having an incredible year as far as scoring in the NBA. I think there's 7 or 8 players right now that are averaging over 30 points a game, which hasn't happened in a long time. You know, and when you talk about the actual race, the only 2 other contenders that you have for MVP right now would be Giannis for the Bucks and Joel Embiid for the 76ers. You know, so at that point, you take
who are both foreigners, Joe.
Right, and that doesn't even come into play. You know, I'm
just saying, like, they still read the same exact box that Kendrick Perkins is trying to put them in.
Right, and you watch those games, and every one of those players do an incredible job at leading their team. And I would actually say right now it's probably a 2-man race, because I don't think Joel Embiid is probably going to get there. So I don't think race has anything to do with any of that, any sport. I mean, you're talking legitimately. When we see race come into play, let's talk about NASCAR. Bubba Wallace is liked by a lot of NASCAR people. There's a lot of NASCAR people that don't like him, right? Yeah. But one sport, you know, people stereotypically look at NASCAR and say just a bunch of redneck hillbillies. Well, you know what? A whole lot of them redneck hillbillies have embraced Bubba Wallace as their driver that they're going to root for. So the false narrative of racism that keeps being pushed in sports in general has to stop. And to move to your point, that's exactly why we have a channel called Stuck in the Catch Fence on YouTube. We're NASCAR enthusiasts. As a matter of fact, if you watch our show on Stuck in the Catch Fence, you'll probably get the news in NASCAR a lot faster than you're going to get it from Fox or any other NASCAR source. You will, because we stay up to date with it and we bring it to you. And you see that a whole lot out of YouTube channels taking off, independent podcasts, where individuals like you and I, Ryan, are able to go on and we are able to give you the unfiltered things that are going on in the world of sports without having big media daddy tell us that's not the narrative we want to push, without having ESPN say, no, if Embiid doesn't win MVP this year, then it's because of racism. It's not because he was outplayed. So, and you see that across sports most certainly on ESPN, who wants to push a political narrative far more than anything that they want to push in sports. And the sad thing is, sports have always been a detachment from everyday life and society. People root for sports. They watch NASCAR, they watch football, they watch basketball, they watch baseball, because they want to detach from their monotonous everyday life where they go to work and essentially do the same thing, and be able to detach themselves from everything that's going on in politics and watch a game, a competitive game that athletes are going to go out and compete. And the goal of that game is to win. The goal of that game is not to be a Democrat or Republican or be white or black or any other race. The goal of that game is to root for your team to win. And you're all on the same page despite your feelings outside in everyday world. So that's what people want from sports. That's what I want from sports. So when I go and get my news on NASCAR, on the NBA, on Major League Baseball, on the NFL, I don't go to the national media sources. I really don't, because they're only going to tell you what they think you need to hear, and they're going to drive a narrative. They're going to drive a narrative all day. You can look at that with the NFL. Can anybody honestly say or believe that Patrick Mahomes was hurt as bad as you heard for 2 weeks based on his play? No sane person would tell you, yeah, I think he's really hurt with a high ankle sprain after watching him play. Because at the end of the day, he probably really wasn't that hurt. I'm not saying he didn't have a twisted ankle, but the man was able to go out and win a Super Bowl pretty handily and have one of the best second halves that we've ever seen in a Super Bowl on a high ankle sprained ankle that apparently he couldn't walk with 2 days before. I don't think that's true. I think that's the narrative that you were told to believe. And unfortunately, just like in politics, the sports world is getting to the point where they're trying to sift through the BS, and they're going to start finding alternative means, and they've already have. So, I want to be one of those people that provide you with one of those alternative means to actually get the real news and the unfiltered, no BS content that will come at you and give you the actual true narrative of what actual fans are thinking about the sport. Ryan?
And I think that's why exactly we started what we started.
Right.
I want to preface this. Not one time has the owner of this station ever told us what we can and cannot say.
Right.
So that's why we're having these conversations. Number one, if you have a belief in who your creator is, you have no problem being who you are. You don't need somebody to tell you what you should and shouldn't believe in. Number two, if you believe in what you believe, you should have no problem talking about and discussing with people what you should and shouldn't believe in. And I've said this being a coach and being a fan of sports in general. And to echo you, Joe, we have never looked at an athlete and said, where do you come from? What's your last name? What should push you to be better that other persons can't do that you do because of outside influences based upon anything other than your production?
Right.
Because sports is the ultimate bar set by society to whether you succeed or don't. Do you do better than what the person competing with you does? Do you do better? And that's just from a team standpoint. Do you do better than what the opponent does? And that's why we love sports, because it sets the bar of competition to what it takes to succeed in life. And that's why sports have always been better until woke companies like Disney have taken over ESPN, and it's not the same. And other national media outlets, you're now turning to the grueling truth, because it is the truth, to YouTube when it comes to Stuck in the Catch Fence, to receive what you think is actual information versus a narrative. And today's market is only about a narrative to get you invested emotionally. If you provide proper content, proper information, people will come to you. And Joe, that's what we live by. Mm-hmm. We're going to provide you the appropriate content. Number one is factual. Factual information is hard to find because, more importantly, people want to put a spin on it to try to be first or loudest. We're not trying to be first or loudest. We're trying to be right. And if you want to turn to us for what's being right, then turn to Froggy 95.9 for our show. Turn to the grueling truth. Turn to Stuck in the Catch Fence. We're not all about being first. We're not all about being loudest. We're about being right. And I think you as the listener want the same thing. That's why you're listening tonight.
Yeah. And you're going to get unfiltered opinions as well, because you should in media creation be able to do that. You should be able to give your opinion without, just like with Reddit, without the fear of losing your job when doing so.
And sports are emotional. That's why we love them. It's emotional that drove you to drive to Kansas City.
Right.
That drove you and me to go to Buffalo, New York, because it's the emotion tied to it, because we know the great equalizer in life is sports. And that's the same thing that you as the community have to recognize as well. Do not listen to the national media. Do not listen to these other outsources that are trying to convince you of something that you should believe in versus what your heart's telling you to believe in. That's why we do this. Because we coach young men and we tell young men the same thing. Life is unfair. Life is hard, but you're preparing yourself by participating in something that's going to set you up for life, whether it's the football field, the gridiron Joe for you, or the baseball field, the most negative thing you can ever participate in baseball for me. These things will set you up with values in life that cannot be replicated anywhere else. So pay attention to the things that matter in life the most, the people that are literally doing it to make sure you, with no dog in the fight. I have no children that I've ever coached. At middle school, you've had no children you've ever coached. We are only trying to set our society to be better people for what we grew up in. And that was not a narrative to be pushed, but values to be pushed to make our society and, more importantly, our generations better than what we've lived with.
Right. No, I 100% agree. And at the end of the day, the narrative that we've seen in the national sports media that has brought a political theory of racism into the arena of basketball and football and baseball lately has got to stop, because it's just not true. It's just not true at all. You know, one of my favorite baseball players ever in the history of my life is Ichiro Suzuki. You know, that he played with incredible intensity, one of the fiercest competitors to ever touch a baseball field, started playing Major League Baseball halfway through his career. Some people argue that he is actually the greatest hitter of all time if you combine his stats from overseas with his Major League Baseball record. I'm not one of those. But by the narrative of modern day sports media, I should have nothing to do with him. I should not be a fan of him or like the way he plays. And that is just ridiculous to me. It is just not a true narrative.
And the thing, we're running out of time, Joe. To speak on that same thing, one of my favorite athletes of all time is Dontrelle Willis. And you know why? Because, like me, Dontrelle Willis had to pitch to his mom. And I thought that was awesome. Because my mom used to put on catcher's gear and catch me. And it's that type of sacrifice, not by me, by our parents, that got them to where they're at. And I appreciate that so much. And the narrative is not to set that. It's not the sacrifice that people had to make people great. It's now the victimhood that has to make people great. And that's not what this country was built upon. That's not what sports were initially built upon. So, again, that's why we wanted to talk about it. I hope you enjoyed it. We could talk about this all day, Joe. But we have Steve Risley coming up next. And he
in
wants
case
to
you
talk
don't know,
basketball.
we have Steve Risley coming up.
So we will be right back after the commercial break. 1981 champion on deck. Thanks for tuning in. This is Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. Hello and welcome back to Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. But it's not just Ryan and Joe for this final segment. We are joined by 1981 NCAA champion and Indiana Hall of Fame basketball player Steve Risley. And if you listen to him on Stuck in the Catch Fence, he sometimes goes by the name Stephon Risley. So, Steve, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. Excited about the Big Ten tournament coming up and the dance. We never had the Big Ten tournament when I was playing, but we did have ultimate success in the dance in 1981, as you said. So, fun time of the year.
Yes, you mentioned that you didn't have the Big Ten tournament, and well, us more younger Hoosier fans, if that's the right way of putting it, I'm not really sure. I don't want to ageist anybody. We wish we didn't have the Big Ten tournament compared to what success that we've had, or lack of success in the Big Ten tournament. Yeah,
and I do have 2 Big Ten rings. We have 2 Big Ten
regular season, correct?
Regular season Big Ten. Yeah, that's all we had back then. It was Big Ten champ. The winner of the season-long race to the Big Ten championship got the automatic bid into the tournament, not the team that gets hot the last 3 games of the year and can come out of nowhere and win the tournament when you've labored all year long in a 15 to 18 game schedule to have it taken away from you because some team like Nebraska gets really hot. But, it is what it is. Got to win them all if you want to win the big one.
That's right. At this point in the season, it is one and done. Cinderella time. March Madness is underway. Briefly, Steve, and again, if you want to catch Steve Risley, he is on The Grueling Truth, just like this show, but he has an Indiana show with Mike Goodpaster. They're able to say more words than we are, a more colorful language than we are, but obviously still as passionate when it comes to IU basketball on The Grueling Truth. So you are able to find Steve there, breaking down every Hoosiers win, loss, and everything in between. But going into the Big Ten tournament,
I will just comment that Goodpaster's totally worthless.
Okay.
Okay.
Unnecessary shot at Mike this past week.
Steve's the star of that show.
I'm the star of that show. So
and we're going to get Mike to tune into this radio program and make sure that he listens to this.
And you know why this is great? Because Mike can't defend himself, and Steve's not used to that. So Steve can throw in as many body jabs as he wants, and Mike can't say a word.
You know what Good Pastor's biggest brag is? I didn't even watch the game. I'm just pulling up the stat sheet. And that guy wings it right off of it and gets it right. So.
Well, there just went 4 people on the grueling truth. So, yeah. But tuning into the Big Ten tournament, Steve, we're still waiting right now. Yeah. Games are being processed. IU gets the double bye. All they have to do is win 2 games to get to the championship. Actually, getting the double bye is actually further than more often what IU gets when it comes to the Big Ten tournament. But that being said, how much are you actually giving credence to the Big Ten tournament, or are your eyes when it comes to Sunday to see where they'll be seated in the big dance?
You know, Mike and I have had this debate on our show ad nauseum, and I finally have bought into Mike's can of worms on this. That I personally, right now, if I was Indiana, if they are pretty well locked into a number 4 seed, which I think that they're pretty close to being locked in, I'd blow off the Big Ten tournament, get out of there, and get home and get some rest.
Really?
Truthfully, I think rest right now is more important to these kids. And everybody says, "Come on, they're 18 to 22-year-olds. They should." But the taxing of a long season, traveling on the road, trying to do your education, your classes, banking and spending your nil money now. I didn't have that problem when I was playing.
No, sir.
No nil money for me.
No nil. You got nil. As in money. That's what money you got. You got nil. Nilch, zero.
Nil had a whole different meaning when I was playing. But I really, that's one mentality, and I kind of see that point of view. But I'm an athlete, and when I step on the court to play or go for a job interview, I just want to win. I want to win. So I'm sure that's Indiana's mentality too, is we can be tired all summer long and rest. Let's go get it right now. Because one of the great things Coach Knight used to say was all season long, we're putting money into the bank. Come tournament time, that's the dividends, and we're pulling it out and enjoying it. And, I think Indiana, the 2-game bye is really nice for IU. They're playing on a 6-man rotation anyway. And they've got nagging injuries, some guys that are limited in their playing time, like a Race Thompson. You really can't give him 35 minutes in a game. Healthy. You don't want to.
Geronimo's foot.
We're not going to have Johnson back for the whole season. Now there was always hope that he might come back and give us some minutes, but now he's redshirted and trying to go for an exemption, a medical exemption for next year. So I definitely welcome the 2 games off. Get some rest. I think we got a good draw. I like our draw a lot. I think all the teams that we have to play to get to the championship game, we can beat. I know Northwestern looms there in front of us, and we've lost to them twice. But I think that's a team that's beatable. If we can get some health and can play some good perimeter defense and whatnot. So
well, let me ask you this, Steve, because I listened to your show with Mike after the Iowa loss, and you said that IU was tired. I agree. And actually, you and Mike Woodson come along that same type of generational path where at the end of the day, you play to play. Like, it doesn't matter. Right. There's no such thing as load management. There's no such thing as being tired. You play to play. And I'm more along that standing too, but you witnessed, according to yourself, that IU was tired. And to be honest, I've coached that way, whatever that's worth. But I always felt the same way, that you play to play. But at the same time, you're having players like Trace Jackson-Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, who, granted, he's a freshman, but now since he's played so much, you can't view him as a freshman anymore. He's a seasoned vet in terms for this season. But I kind of feel the same way with you. The Big Ten tournament has, at least in recent years, determined what Indiana can do to try to make the tournament. We're in the tournament. So that's a different approach. I kind of agree with you that if we play a Northwestern or a Rutgers and we feel like we're not going to advance our seeding, then just rest. I feel that way because you're talking about players playing 38 to 40 minutes a game. And regardless of how great you are as an athlete, Stephen, you would know this, that is still taxing on the body playing in the Big Ten.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you this, and to both you and Steve, I kind of want to hear from you. So when you look at Indiana as a whole in their season, and outside that 5-game winning run that they had midway through the season, and the most recent 3-game streak that they had, it seems that Indiana has played really well and then really bad. And just recently against Michigan, we saw some things down the stretch in the game. Mainly free throws that definitely need to be worked on to be able to compete at that high level and possibly making a championship run. Now, my question, and the thing I look at, is the Big Ten gives you an opportunity to see if you could build multiple wins in a row against really good teams. Do you think that is not as valuable heading into the dance as the rest? Is that what your thoughts on that are?
All right, you've opened up a whole can of worms here, Joe, by asking great questions to begin with. First off, let me preface everything by saying no player on that team is going to tell you they're tired. All right. As a player, I would never admit that I'm tired. I want to.
I would hope not. I would hope.
Yeah, there won't be any player that will tell you they're tired.
Our eyeballs may say differently, but I would hope that they don't say they're tired.
I would hope they wouldn't either. And I know in my era, not one player. We always thought, because come time when Knight was coaching, I'm sure Woody's following the same path. They're only practicing about an hour of practice now a day, whereas in the beginning of the season they're practicing hard 3 hours a day. Now it's down to about an hour, probably 20 to 30 minutes of that is film work too. They're just going out, getting up and down the court a couple times, loosening up their legs, getting some wind and getting the sweat worked up, trying to keep everybody healthy, not put in position to get any sprained ankles or any busted up knees or broken fingers or anything of that nature that comes throughout the course of practicing. But no player is going to tell you they're tired. As a former player and looking at it, and to allude to what Joe greatly said, there are things that are going on the basketball court that will tell a coach or tell you they're tired. Free throws, jump shots, percentages coming down, missed free throws. That's because you have tired legs.
Missed defensive assignments at times like they had against Iowa.
It's because the first thing that goes are your legs. Yep. I mean, they do. I've run a half marathon multiple times. I used to run the mini marathon every year before the Indy 500. And I'm going to tell you what, first 10 miles were okay. But that's what I trained at, 10-mile runs once a week or something. You get to those last 3 miles, your legs turn to rubber and jello real quick. And you're like, oh my God, how do I get one foot in front of the other one? So Joe's observation was spot on, Joe, in that free throw percentage is coming down, jump shots coming down, missed assignments, not fighting as hard through screens. We've gotten out rebounded badly in the last 2 games. Indiana was a pretty strong rebounding team all season long in Big Ten play. Now, your other question was Big Ten affords you opportunities to play back-to-back games, get in some winning streaks, build some momentum going. I'm going to tell you what, if you aren't ready to play now, you aren't going to be ready to play. All you want to do right now, you better be, if you're not mentally ready to play in tournament basketball and play multiple games in a short period of time, mentally, you're not ever going to be ready, because you've just gone through an entire Big Ten season. Whereas you asked the question and Joe said, you've been afforded those opportunities to prepare for that and to prepare to be ready to play multiple games. What I don't like is playing, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it looks like it's probably going to be an Indiana-Purdue Big Ten championship, possibly. Do we really want to go through that mental drainer again when we're going to be playing Thursday or Friday in the one and done dance?
That's the only thing I'm focused on.
Yeah.
I agree. Because we don't have to.
Yeah.
Indiana's afforded itself based upon what it's done in the regular season. Right, exactly.
We beat them twice. What the hell are we going to prove by beating them a third time?
Right.
Other than another trophy to put in Assembly Hall.
That we don't hang banners for Big Ten tournament champions.
No, we do, but they're all on one. They're all on one or two banners. They're not individual banners we put up.
Thank you. We don't hang banners. We add to the banner.
Yeah, Purdue does that. They put individual banners up.
Well, when you don't have 5 national championships, they have to. Yeah. So, their Super Bowl will be Game 3 if they meet us in the Big Ten championship. Sorry, Brian Graham. That's the truth.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the NCAA championship. We got about 5 minutes to discuss this.
All right.
When it comes to March Madness and the Big Dance. Now, Indiana's in a position it hasn't been. Maybe the COVID year, we thought we were locked in. Last year, most certainly, we were all paying attention to Selection Sunday. We're looking at it differently now. It's not about are we in, it's what seed we are.
Right.
The last thing that I saw was us playing Iona. I'll be honest, I don't want to play Iona because Rick Pitino coaches Iona, and I don't want to play against a good coach. which I think Rick Pitino is. But now I'll ask you this, Mr. Risley, when it comes to what IU is now facing when it comes to March Madness, what is success when it comes to the big dance? Is it 1 win, 2 wins? Is it already what they've already done to get to this point where they don't have to rely on the Big Ten tournament? Where are you at as a 1981 champion?
All right. Again, I only have 4 or 5 minutes. First off, what is success? Well, for me, it's a ring. All right. Because I've got one.
Yep.
All right. So for me, success is winning the whole damn thing. And that bus ride back to Bloomington and pulling that bus ride into Assembly Hall in front of 18,000 fans. That's what success is. Anything short of that for me now would be a disappointment. So, but that varies from program to program. Some people it's getting to the Sweet 16. Some people it's, Clark Kellogg gets on his damn CBS show and Clark talks about he's a Sweet 16 competitor. Piss on the Sweet 16. That gets you halfway there. Give me a break. Okay.
Hey,
you made great
quoted
points.
Bob Knight twice and only said "damn" twice and "piss." I think we're doing all right, Joe. So let's let him keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can't use. Oh, that's right. I forgot I'm on radio. My apologies.
No, you're doing great. You quoted Bob Knight twice and haven't dropped the F-bomb.
Let me just put it to you this way: the tournament. Here's what it is. First off, the tournament is 51% luck. Okay. The tournament is 51% luck. You got to get breaks. You got to get balls rolling your way. You've got to get good calls and not bad calls. It's 51% luck. It's where you end up playing. I mean, does Indiana have to get on a plane and go to the West Coast and play?
Of course they will, Steve, because that's every time.
Okay. So that's my wife just texted me. And from LA, she just landed. She left at 2:00 this afternoon, just landed in New York City just now. I just got a text from her. She has touched ground in New York City. Okay. So that, sitting on an airplane, I don't care how big, what kind of plane. You've got a private plane. It's still not comfortable to be on an airplane that long a period of time. Yeah. So that wears you out. Staying in a hotel. So just the luck of where you get put, the luck of the bounce of the ball, the luck of the referee's call. And as you go farther into the tournament, you made a great point. You don't want to play Iona. Why? Why don't you want to play Iona? The farther along you get in the tournament, the more coaching becomes relevant and important. You look at all the Final Four teams. There's a reason why North Carolina in its heyday, Duke in its heyday, Indiana in its heyday, Kentucky in its heyday. You can have all the darlings, the sweet teams in the tournament, but you generally get the great coaches. The Michigan State's coach, again, I'm dropping his name. Tom Izzo's of the world. Takes above average teams, and he's a good enough coach. He can find a way to get that team dancing in the Final Four. Yep. So coaching becomes more and more important as you go along too. There's a lot of factors that go to getting a team there.
So what's success, Steve? We got less than a minute. What is success for IU this year in the March Madness?
I think success for IU is an Elite Eight.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right.
I think they're that good.
Yeah.
I do.
I think IU can beat any team in the country, and I think they can lose.
I do. I think they match up well with anybody. They have 2 good bigs, Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis. Trace is very difficult to guard. I think our weakness right now is that we're 1 guard short of being strong there. I think that Galloway and Kopp have both shown the ability to drain the 3, and they've gotten more aggressive with that, and they need to get more aggressive with that in the tournament. I think rest is an opponent of ours right now, is getting some rest and getting these kids wore out. But I don't see a lot of teams. This is kind of one of those years where there's not been a dominant team all year. Right. When the most dominant team, really, if you think about it, in rankings wise, has been Purdue, and we've beaten them twice.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's a wide open tournament, and with a couple of good breaks and a couple of things go our way and a good draw, we could be playing for a Big Ten championship against Purdue, possibly, if Purdue can get there and we can get there. And I think right now, I would say an Elite Eight appearance by this team would be a good get. Anything above that will be gravy.
Okay. So house money, Elite Eight, we hit even. If we get anything beyond that, we're taking it to the house.
It's a cherry on top of your piece of cheesecake.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you joining us. We are excited for Hoosier Nation to celebrate.
Sorry about the language.
We expect nothing less. That's why we have you on.
Listen, I've known Bob Knight since 1975. All right. If you're silly to think that some of that hasn't rubbed off on me.
Well, we hope you've all enjoyed this week's episode of Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. We will be back next week as well.
I got
Again, you
one
can catch
thing.
us on the Grueling Truth. Steve, go ahead.
Go IU.
Yeah.
Go IU. Hoosier Nation. Again, you can catch Steve on the Grueling Truth, where he is with Mike Goodpaster. And again, you can hear more colorful language, actually more so that will actually get you in trouble with the FCC.
And I will tell you what it's not as good as. It's not as good as Stuck in the Catch Fence.
There you
Yeah,
go.
thank you, Steve.
Our NASCAR show that's on your station and on our YouTube station. But as good as our IU basketball show is, it's not quite as good as Stuck in the Catch Fence.
Yeah,
Don't
well,
make me blush. Don't
yeah,
make me
you're
blush.
working with professionals here, Steve.
There you go.
That's going to be it for this week's show. We hope you tune in next time.